Blur is a 2010 racing game that I once saw somebody describe as Activision's attempt at a Mario Kart killer, and I think I can safely say this game has largely been lost to time as it doesn't seem many people really play this game or have even heard of it. And if Wikipedia is correct, this game only sold 500,000 units in its shelf life, with only 31,000 sales in the first 5 days. I myself haven't played a lot of racing games, but I'd place this one towards the bottom if I was to ever rank every racing game I've ever played. It had a lot of good ideas for sure, but it also had many bad ideas that caused it to trip over its own feet. I think I'll start my review off on a positive note by saying it has amazing graphics and insanely detailed vehicles, all of which are licensed. I am curious as to how much they spent licensing all these cars, but they look great. Alright, with the positive out of the way, now for my biggest negatives. 1. This game does not have a drift button. And 2. All the vehicles in this game are hard to control, and I'd often slam into walls on tight curves or fall off the map on mountain tracks. These two mechanics did not mix very well. At all. Off the top of my head, I think pretty much every racing game I've ever played had a drift button. Even Eminem's Kart on the DS had a drift button, and that game is absolute trash. And this really restricted the vehicles you could choose from, as the amount of grip they have varies greatly, and I could only reasonably use vehicles with a higher grip, or risk fishtailing everywhere and skidding around like I was on black ice. And speaking of the vehicle selection, it's pretty big and is divided up by classes, which I wasn't a huge fan of. I might want to use one car on one event, but I couldn't because it was the wrong class. RIP. And you can paint most cars whatever color you want for free, but for some weird reason, certain vehicles are color locked. Maybe that was worked into the licensing contract or something. And you can also add mods to some cars. I unlocked a battering ram effect for the shield power-up and an effect to get 4 bolts instead of 3 when I got a bolt pickup, but you can only have one mod active at a time. Bummer. Alright, moving on to gameplay. This game has 3 main modes: races, destruction, and my least favorite, checkpoint, in addition to there being boss races. Races are pretty self-explanatory and is the main reason I bought this game. You try to score first place against various amounts of other cars. Not a lot to it. But you do sort of fight the cars using power-ups scattered around the tracks like bolts, mines, or the annoying lightning storms, and there are defensive pickups like the shield and repair kit, and of course a turbo boost. You're not really trying to wreck the other cars, more of just trying to slow them down with your arsenal of gadgets, but you do earn points for wrecking your opponents. Speaking of points, Blur took on a interesting XP system approach. In this game, experience points are fans, and you earn fans for just doing stuff, driving well, using gadgets, etc., and you sometimes pick up fan demands, such as nitro ram another vehicle, and upon completion, you earn extra fans, and instead of having levels, you have fan levels, based off the amount of fans you have, with new vehicles being locked behind fan levels. Okay, back to the topic of gameplay. That pretty well sums up racing. You try to reach first place. Woohoo! The next event, Destruction, is a bit more akin to a demolition derby. You run a track with an expiring timer while trying to wreck as many cars as possible, earning points and more time with each wreck. Now, I think I should discuss the light system here. You try to earn lights in every event, with more being rewarded based off how well you perform, or in the case of destruction mode, how many points you earn. Obviously, the more lights you get, the better, and each section in the campaign is locked behind a certain amount of lights. E.g., one section might require you to hold 175 lights to progress. Alright, moving on to the final main campaign mode, and my least favorite, Checkpoint. Checkpoint events were either pretty laid back or stupid hard. I didn't mind the laid back ones, but their difficulty could get a tad excessive, especially when you were forced to use crappy cars. Basically, you have to drive arenas with an expiring clock and make it to X amount of checkpoints without running out of time, while collecting timers, or bonus times, and checkpoints themselves added some time to your clock as well. But some of these arenas decide to give you practically no time, and that checkpoints would only add 2 seconds back to your clock, and they were spread out pretty far. Those I didn't like, but again, they were often chill and gave the player a fair amount of time to get the job done. The last single-player mode is boss races. There's one per section, and they're actually optional to progress. Basically, each section has a set of challenges you must complete to unlock the boss race, and then the boss itself is a 1v1 race. I only bothered to do the first 2 boss races, as again, you technically don't really have to do them if you don't want to. And yeah, that pretty well wraps up Blur. No story, so that's a small rip. There is a multiplayer mode that's apparently still active sometimes, using a Kobatine video from several months ago as evidence. A great YouTuber, by the way. Oh, I did forget to mention that Blur has an option to disable the licensed music soundtrack. I assume this option was made for content creators who didn't want to make videos on a game with copyrighted music. Overall, Blur earns a 7.1 out of 10 from me. I paid $15 for a used copy with store credit. Try to get a PAL or European copy if you can find one. According to price charting, they go for less than half the price of US copies. As of January 9th, the date I'm writing this, the average cost of a US CIB copy is $35, while it's only $15 for a European copy. I don't know why, but PAL copies work on an American Xbox, so woohoo! Anyways, some similar games to Blur I'd suggest would be my favorite racing game, Hot Wheels Unleashed, or Microsoft's kart racer, Joyride Turbo, both of which I have reviewed, link in the end cards and description. Well, that's all from me for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Hope somebody enjoyed. For anyone new to my channel, I mostly play, review, and discuss zombie and horror games, with sometimes other topics like today, so feel free to check out some of my other content if that maybe sounds interesting. Always remember that Jesus loves you all. Thanks again for watching. Have a blessed day. Peace.